Hey folks, it's Nate, and welcome back. It's been a little bit since I recorded a video, but here we are back in the garage, and things look a little different from the last, workshop video that I did. You might remember I was working on this grill, right? I think that's the last real video that I've done. I modified this grill to fit in the front of my LJ. Yes, this is an LJ. For those of you that aren't familiar with the channel, this is my 2005 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited, and it has the wrong headlights and the wrong grill. That's because I'm a YJ guy at heart, and because of that, I decided to swap a YJ grill into my LJ. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about the fact that the last time you saw this Jeep, it was silver, and now it is this cool copper color, right? And I'll give you some close-ups in a second, but I painted the whole Jeep right here in this garage. And in doing that, I learned a ton of stuff. This is the first time I've ever painted a vehicle. I've done lots of rattle can in the past. I've maybe even done a little bit with spray guns in the past, but never anything to this size and the amount of work that had to go into this. I've had to do body work. I had to fill holes. I had to fix rust. I had to replace my windshield frame, the whole frame. The thing was rotted out when I went to take it off. But we'll get into that in a minute, because I went to social media and I asked all of you, what questions do you have? I just painted this Jeep in my garage. What questions do you have about what I learned in the process? And that's this video. We're gonna talk about what I did to paint this thing. This isn't going to be a step-by-step how-to on how to paint a vehicle, but if you want to know the things that a guy that has an average level of painting ability learned by not only talking to a friend who used to own a body shop, but also just trial and error. How the hell did I paint this Jeep? If you want to know that, then stick around. So the number one question people are going to ask is why? Why did I paint the whole Jeep, and why did I do it at home? So it's trail Jeep, right? It doesn't have to look fancy. It doesn't have to look great. But when I was done with the grill, the Jeep was like 3 different colors. The grill was black. Plus, I had done a bunch of welding work on the base of this grill down here to make it work with the TJ frame and the TJ mounting points. I basically cut the bottom of the TJ grill off, the mounting on the bottom, and I grafted it onto the bottom of the YJ grill. So that all had to be painted, otherwise it was going to rust to hell, and it was just bare metal. I did a bunch of work to the hood. You've noticed these fenders. They're obviously not factory. These are Molnar Fab ultra highline fenders, and they required cutting into the hood, which you'll see in the B-roll there. When I cut into the hood, of course, that left a rather ugly mark on the hood from where I cut, and well, it needed to be painted. The fenders themselves, of course, they had to be painted. They were bare steel. And the doors, if you remember, before I painted it, the doors were like a teal color because I'd bought them used. My full doors are hanging up here. I haven't put them on since I got the half doors because I just like half doors better. That's why I bought them. So I'm using them primarily on the Jeep. I wanted them to match. Now my full doors don't match, so maybe someday I'll paint them. Maybe I'll just sell them. I don't know. But, so that's why I painted it. Why did I paint it here in the garage? Because I didn't want to spend the money. I could have taken it someplace and had a professional job done, but it would have taken time and it would have taken a lot more money, I think anyway, than I put into painting it here at home. Now, like I said, trail Jeep, so I wasn't too worried about it coming out perfect, but I did want it to look nice. So I did take my time. I did a whole bunch of body work before I got started. Made some changes to the Jeep that I've wanted to make for a while. Things that just didn't make sense anymore, like the antenna. Who uses AM/FM radio anymore? I no longer have an antenna on my body because I took it off to paint, and when I had it off, I thought, why should I put this back on? So I covered it in Bondo, filled it good, sanded it good, primed it good, and now I have no more antenna mount. Same thing with the rear fender flares. I took the fender flares off and I filled in the holes. Gaps that were in the body, dents and nicks that have been there for years, I cleaned all those up and I fixed them because I thought if I'm doing all this work, might as well go ahead and get that done. All right, next question. Can you paint a car outside. Now I painted here in the garage, which was a whole different set of prep work. I had to hang, I basically hung drop cloths all over the place. I didn't close off the back part of the garage. I didn't lay down a drop cloth. I probably could have done all that, but I did. Now, maybe the paint job would have come out better if I didn't. I didn't get a lot of particles in the paint though, so I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Maybe I was just lucky. But the question is, can you paint outdoors? And the direct answer is, sure, you can paint wherever you want to, but you're going to end up with stuff in your paint. I decided to paint the primer on the doors and some rattle can on some of the other components that weren't exterior facing, like the insides of the fenders and stuff like that, outside in the driveway, so that it would air out and stuff. And I was considering painting the whole Jeep out in the driveway instead, so that I wouldn't have as much fumes and paint and whatnot in the house, because right above me is my living room, right? So that's another thing you got to think about is ventilation. I set up a bunch of fans at the exit of the garage to pull the fumes out of the garage, and that worked pretty well. The house didn't really stink until I did the clear coat, which smelled really terrible. But I digress. Outdoors, just that little bit that I painted outdoors, I got all kinds of like little bugs and particles from the air and whatnot in the primer, which I then had to try to smooth out before I put the paint on. So if I were to paint the whole Jeep outside, I think it would have been a nightmare. So I wouldn't recommend it. I know people do it. I know pros say you can. Your mileage may vary. I wouldn't try it. If you have a garage, do it in the garage. If you don't have a garage, rent a paint booth somewhere and do it there. In fact, if you have a garage, maybe rent a paint booth and do it there, because the results are going to still come out even better. How do you deal with overspray? This is probably a question that plagues even the pros, right? And I'm going to tell you, you deal with overspray by being extra careful and not having to deal with overspray, because overspray sucks. I'm standing right here at this part of the Jeep, and you'll notice the extra paint that I put down here as decoration. I wanted to do something like this anyway, but the reason I went heavy with it here is because right here I messed up the hood with overspray. I tried everything to try to get it off. There's professional products you can buy that are supposed to help remove overspray. I didn't go that far. Some people say you can wipe it down with acetone and that'll help remove it. I thought maybe I could get it off with a high grit, I should say fine grit sandpaper, you know, kind of go over it and smooth it out. Nothing I did got rid of it. And if you look close, you'll see it. It's like right up here. I got overspray from clear because, well, I'll tell you the story. What I did was I got the hood and everything. I had taken the whole Jeep apart. I took all the pieces off the Jeep, the fenders, the hood, the windshield frame, and I painted them all separately, which that way you can get a better, cleaner coat on everything. Well, when I was putting everything back together and I put the hood back on, I nicked up the fender. And when I also noticed that some of the trim here, some where I cut off for the hood to clear the fender, was contacting the fender. And I knew that if I left it that way, it was going to rub through the paint, even if I did put on this rubber trim that I eventually added. So what I did was I trimmed the hood with an angle grinder with a flat disc on it. I just sanded it smooth. And then I had to, of course, touch up the paint on the fender that I had boogered up, on this fender and that fender. Well, on that fender, I was able to get away with it because I masked off or covered the whole hood with a drop cloth. But over here, of course, I had to paint the edge that I had cleaned up. So I sprayed it with paint. You know, I did my best to cover everything up. I sprayed the edge and I sprayed this fender with paint again, and then I did them with clear again, and it looked really good. But then I noticed all this overspray. It goes all the way over to here on the hood, and I just couldn't get it off. Now, the right thing to do would have been take the when I did the paint, to spray the whole hood with clear again, right? And I wanted the project to be over with. I was at the end. I was just putting things back together, and I had messed up the paint, and I was so mad at myself. But I just wanted things to be done, so I didn't take the time to re-clear the whole hood. And now I regret it, because the hood, which is the focal point of the freaking Jeep, that hood in this grill, I messed it up. So I decided that I would just cover it up with this extra artistic painting, and we're going to call it good. If someday I repaint this Jeep, I will not make that mistake again, but here we are. So how about PPE? Protecting your lungs, protecting your body, your hands, your face, everything, right? I would recommend you buy a paint suit, one of those hooded paint suits. You probably want a respirator. I mean, you definitely want a respirator. I used rubber gloves. That's all recommended. I didn't buy the paint suit. I did my best to cover myself up using basically the same stuff I use when I weld. I used my welding cap. I had a mask on. I did not wear safety goggles, although maybe I should have. I didn't get anything in my eyes, luckily. I wore the gloves and, of course, the respirator. I used this 3M respirator with the cartridge canisters. These are canisters that are designed for organic fumes. And I'll put a link to where you can buy the canisters and the mask and everything, basically everything that I used in the description of the video. But PPE is important. I'm not going to candy coat that. PPE is super important because you're dealing with chemicals, especially the clear coat. The clear coat has a really harsh smell to it. It doesn't smell good. It's not good for you to breathe in, I'm certain. The paint probably not either. Is not good for you to breathe in. It doesn't smell nearly as bad, but protect your lungs because you breathe this stuff in. They're chemicals. It's going to get into your lungs. I don't know. That could affect your reasoning and your brain and all those things. These are important things that you need to protect, right? I've spent lots of years working around workshops like this, completely amateur stuff. I've had lots of close calls where I wasn't wearing safety gear and something happened and then I had to panic and try to resolve something that if I had just put on the safety goggles or if I had just worn the gloves, it wouldn't have been a problem. So learn from me, okay? Wear the PPE, right? Yeah, so that's all I'm going to say about that. All right, next question. What about prep? What did I have to do to prep this thing? Basically, I'll run through it. What I did was, like I said, I started with a gray Jeep, well, silver Jeep. What I did was I went over the whole Jeep that I wasn't going to be priming with first like a 120 grit sandpaper, and then I worked my way down until I was at, I think, a 4 something. Was it 400, 420, something like that, all with the DA sander. And I went over every inch of it. Before I did that, though, I took everything off. I took the hood off. I took the cowl cover off. I pulled off the windshield wipers. I took every piece of trim I could get to off. Took the top off. I took all the seals and stuff that I could take off. I took these windshield brackets off, you know, the hinges. I took the windshield frame itself off. That's when I discovered the windshield frame was all rotted out and I decided to replace it. Took the doors off, the hinges, of course the fenders, the grill, everything. I just took everything I could off of the Jeep. And everything that wasn't getting painted, I stuck in a box and I put on the other side of the basement. Everything that was getting painted, like I said, I sanded it all down with the 120 grit, and then I worked my way up from 120 to 220 to 320, and I think I ended at 420. Basically, the goal here is to make sure that nothing you're about to paint is still shiny. So all of this had paint and clear on it. I wasn't necessarily going through the clear, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was to scuff it all up and then smooth it down so it's as smooth as you can get it before you paint. You want to make sure the surface is also as clean as possible. So after I sanded it down, and the areas that I either sanded through the paint to get the bare metal, or I had rust, I sanded the rust down until I got the bare metal. Areas that I wanted to fill with Bondo, with body putty, I filled those in and I primed those before I painted it. All the areas that had to be primed, things that were the wrong color, things that were down to bare metal, or things that were body filler, I hit those with that rattle can primer that I had bought. And then once I had all that done, I made sure the primer was also nice and smooth. I think I went over it with the highest grit, the 420, before I thought about painting anything. Once I had everything sanded down, the DA sander had a port on it for connecting to a dust collection machine. I adapted that down to fit on my shop vac, and I ran the shop vac while I was sanding. That helped with the dust a little bit. You're going to have a ton, and I mean a ton of dust. And the less you get in the air, the better. Wear that respirator, even if it's just the particulate respirator. Wear that while you're doing the sanding, because that dust is going to get everywhere. Then you want to get all that dust off the body. Now, you could take it outside and use a hose. I didn't want to try to drive it. Obviously, I couldn't drive it. It was all taken apart. So what I did was I used that glass cleaner. So the spray-on glass cleaner. I sprayed basically every component of the Jeep down with this glass cleaner. And then I wiped it down with just normal grocery store paper towels. They might have been the thicker, like Bounty ones. But they were just paper towels. Then after I did that, I went over it with the grease and wax remover, and then after the grease and wax remover, if there were areas that I thought needed it, I went over those with the tack cloth, though I did not go over the whole Jeep with the tack cloth. The grease and wax remover, once I did that and it was dry, everything seemed clean enough. So I didn't bother with the tack cloth on everything. Once it was all that clean, it was ready to paint. So that's when I started the actual paint process. So basically I took a whole day to do the actual painting then. I started as early as I could. I got the paint down on the, I got the base coat down in 2 or 3 coats. Just basically as soon as I thought it was covered well enough, I considered it done. And then I let it set. Your paint can will tell you how long it has to set for before you can do the clear. I didn't wait too long. I let it set just long enough, then I did the clear. Now, you want to be careful about not getting any dust or whatever on the vehicle when it's just with the base coat. If you get any on there, you're going to have to go over with that tack cloth and clean it off. So just keep that in mind. You want to keep everything as clean as possible. And as you can see from all the particles floating around in the air here, I probably got stuff in the paint. It's just the way it is. And then I did the clear, of course. The clear went down another 2 or 3 coats. I think I did 2 on the body. And then I talked to my buddy, and he's like, no, you should do 3, but it was too late for the body, so I did 3 on everything else. I ended up painting the body one day, and I painted everything else another day, because I just didn't have a lot of room in this shop. And that actually brings me to another point. Make sure you have room. My shop is cramped, right? So what I ended up doing was I took all the pieces that I could and put them in the back of the shop before they were painted. And I left them back there. And then I got the body part prepped and painted. And then once it was done and painted, I actually winched it out into the driveway and covered it in a tarp. And then I pulled all the other pieces out to this part of the garage, and I put them on sawhorses or hung them from the floor joists above me, whatever I could do. And then I painted all those on a separate day. Now, there's a lot of things that could go wrong there. If the temperature was a little bit different from one day to the next, or if my sprayer was set a little bit differently, or whatever, there's lots of reasons. The paint could lay in a slightly different pattern. It could lay in a slightly different color. All these things can affect that. So if you can paint all on one day, you should do it all on one day. I didn't have that option, but everything turned out okay. I can look at the body and all the other pieces, and I can't see any difference. So things are okay. What did it cost? Well, that's a tough question to answer. I can give you the numbers for my paint job, but some of these are tools that I've had to buy. Some of it is the windshield frame. I had to replace the windshield frame and the windshield. So I'm including that in the price, but I will tell you how much they were so you can subtract that if you don't have to do that. So the first thing you're going to need is a spray gun. This is the Hobo Freight or Harbor Freight. I forget the name of it, but it's the $10 or $15 spray gun, HVLP spray gun that you can buy through their website. I bought it with the regulator, and I think there was a cleaning kit that came with it and a couple other things. I paid like $30 instead of the 10 or 15 bucks. So $30. It comes with everything you basically need here. The one thing I do recommend is don't use this cup, this little hopper here that comes with it. The thing I don't like about this is it's opaque. It does have measuring lines on the side. But you can't really see through it. Sure, you can see the liquid that's in it. But every time you change from, say, primer to paint or paint to clear, you're going to have to clean the heck out of this cup. So instead, I recommend, let me get this back on here, that you buy the Spectrum Universal Paint System. Now, there is an adapter you have to buy, too, to make this thing work with this gun. This cup here, you put a liner inside of it, right? You put one of these caps on it. So you do your paint mixing right in this thing. You can see it's got the measurements right on the side here, right? And you find it's all It's all measured out. Like this is 4:1. It'll tell you how much paint and how much reducer or whatever to put in there. And then you put it all in there, and then you put this cap on top. This goes in the liner, see? This closes up the liner itself. And then you close this guy up. And then you could just shake this, although you have an opening at the top here, but I was stirring it with a paint stick. But once you have that together, it clips into this adapter that goes on top of the gun. And then you just spray, right? And when you're done with this collar or whatever, you take the liner out and chuck it in the garbage. And that even contains all the paint, right? You probably want to cap that off somehow. I think there's caps in there. Yes, there are. These little guys, they're caps. You can cap this off, and now that paint can sit there for a little while in the container if you're like just between coats or whatever, or you can cap that off and chuck it in the garbage, right? Now, obviously, that's not the most ecologically friendly way to get rid of paint, but, you know, you do you. Get this back apart. But I highly recommend these because this way you're not cleaning the heck out of the gun. You do have to clean the gun whenever you're done with it, but you don't have to clean this every time. In fact, I only used this for cleaning. What I would do is I would fill this up with lacquer thinner, not fill it all the way up, but I'd fill it up enough, and I'd spray it through the gun until it came out clear. So there you go. Nate's tip. Buy the cheap gun, buy the Spectrum stuff. Now, the cheap gun is a cheap gun. No two ways about it. The tip that comes with it was decent. What is it, a 1.4? Yes, a 1.4. That's something you need to pay attention to when you are figuring out how to spray your paint. The 1.4 on the tip of the gun, tip of this sprayer, tells you the spread of the gun, right? If the paint that you're shooting requires a smaller or larger spread or larger tip, you're going to have to replace this tip. So pay attention to that. But once you have that all figured out, there's knobs and dials on here that adjust things like the pressure and the spread and how much paint goes through the gun. There's other videos on how to get all those adjustments done. I don't fully understand everything. I basically puttered around with it until I got it to spray evenly, and then I went from there. What else did I buy? Drop cloths and things. I bought a kit. It's not laying here anymore. Oh, here it is. I bought a bag of these drop cloths. I forget where I got them, probably Amazon, plastic drop cloths. These might have been 10 or 15 bucks. There's like, it doesn't say how many. There's a lot in here. Okay, drop cloths and masking tape. I bought this 5-pack of green masking tape. It's from Refinish Automotive Masking Tape. I'll put a link in the description to where I got this on Amazon. This stuff worked pretty well. I've never used professional masking tape, so I have no idea what to compare this to. I've used like the 3M blue tape you buy at Walmart for painting jobs around the house, and I'd say this is better than that. It felt better than that. This is also automotive paint or automotive tape, so maybe that's why it felt different. It worked really well. Maybe you want to get a thicker one than this, but this, it went on well, it came off well, the paint didn't tear off with the tape. It worked really well. So I recommend that. This is the first thing I'm going to tell you that I should have done differently, and that is primer. The Jeep was silver. So the places that were bare metal and the places that were the wrong color, like the grille and the doors, those are the only things I knew I wanted to 100% cover in primer, right? So the fenders, the grille, the parts of the hood that were bare metal, the places that I sanded down, those had to be primed. I put primer over all the body filler that I put on it. And the doors, I sanded those till they were dull, and then I primed them as well. Because I thought there wasn't a lot I was going to be priming, I just bought like 5 or 6 rattle cans of Rust-Oleum primer, automotive primer. And then I bought like 6 more, and then like 6 more. Because I primed so much more than I thought I was going to prime. So I spent more than I needed to on primer. If I would have bought primer from the place that I got the paint from, it probably would have cost me $100 or $200 for the can of primer, but then I could have primed the entire Jeep, and it all would have been nice and smooth and uniform when I started. But since I used the rattle cans, I probably spent $70-80 on rattle can primer, which is probably not the quality I would have got from the company I bought the paint from. And it did an okay job. It did the job of priming, but it just, don't do that, right? So figure I probably spent 50, 60, 70 bucks on just primer, right? So the windshield frame, and the installation of the windshield, that all came out to, if I'm ballparking, about $350 to $400. I bought a new frame from, I think, carparts.com. So I bought a whole new windshield frame that came black primed. So I did prime that whole thing as I was doing it. I found a local auto glass place. I just took them the windshield frame and my old windshield frame with the old windshield in it. They salvaged what they had to. There were some trim pieces they needed, and then they put the windshield in. I think they charged me about $250. If I remember, the windshield frame itself was about another $200. So figure, you know, that's about $450. I'm ballparking. It's $400 to $450 because I don't have the receipt anymore, and I forget what I paid for the windshield frame, but that's the right ballpark. So you can remove that if you're trying to tally things up here. Cleaners and whatnot. I bought these Chinesium lint-free cloths. They were about 50 bucks for a box, and I used about a quarter of it. I don't have the can handy, but I'll put a link in the description of the video. I bought a can of grease and wax remover, a big gallon can. I think that was like 70 bucks all by itself. I bought tack cloths, just a pack of like 6 of them. If you've never seen a tack cloth, it's basically a really thin cloth with like a stickiness to it. You use that to wipe down the body and get any dust off of it. I also bought a box of aerosol can spray glass cleaner, and the reason I used that was because I watched a video of an auto body guy. He said that he used this before he did the tack cloth. He would spray it with his glass cleaner, the whole body, right after sanding or whatever, because it catches all the crud that's on the body, and then he just wipes it off with a normal paper towel. Then he goes over it with the grease and wax remover with those dust-free cloths over the whole thing, and then he'll use a tack cloth if he feels like he needs more to clean it off, right? So I bought all of those things, and I used all of them. All right, that all came to like another $161. I didn't break it down in my list here, but that's what I wrote down. Gloves and protection, like personal protection. I did spring for a decent respirator. The DA sander. If you've never seen one of these before, I have it packed away, but it's one of those air sanders that moves. It's called dual action, right? It vibrates and spins at the same time so that it sands more evenly. I bought one of those on Amazon. It was about 50 bucks. Sanding paper, right? I bought the discs that go with the DA sander. It came with a bunch, which was helpful, but I probably spent another 20 to 30 bucks on sandpaper in general. And stuff I didn't even put on my list. Things like body filler. And then, of course, after all that is the paint itself. I bought a gallon of paint. Trinity 1945 is the brand of the paint. Came from a website called paintforcars.com. This was like a little over 300 bucks. 310, I think, is probably a good round number. It came with the gallon of paint. It came with the... it's reducer. It came with this is a urethane paint. It came with urethane reducer, of which I have plenty left, so I could probably do a whole nother gallon without buying more reducer. And it came with the clear. Clear has stuff stuck to it here. And it came with the clear itself. Now you get options for the clear when you buy it. I went like middle of the road on the clear coat. This is Performance Coatings Simply Clear 6400. And again, I have a decent amount of clear, and the reducer for the clear, or activator for the clear, I would need more of because I have clear left, but not reducer. So the gallon did pretty well. I would say that if you're going to paint a Jeep, just the outside, not the inside, a gallon's probably going to do you. I intended to do a Herculiner on the inside, so I didn't bother to paint the inside. I'll prep and Herculine that later. All right, so that's everything I bought. If you add all that up, it comes out to about $1,100, $1,200. Now that includes the windshield frame and the windshield. Right, the installation of the windshield. For that, if you knock off what, $450 or $400, you get a better idea. It's like $600, $700, $800 for all of the stuff that I had to buy to put this together. Now, I already had the air compressor. If you don't have an air compressor, you're going to have to think about that. Maybe you already have some of these tools and you don't have to buy them. Maybe you have a DA sander, maybe you don't. Maybe you have an air sprayer because of whatever and you don't have to buy that. Maybe you've already got the PPE or the tape. But, you know, so your mileage may vary. The paint itself, I thought, was a pretty good deal. I've seen some places selling this much paint for like $500–600. These people were less expensive and it came out pretty good. So I found the setting up of the paint gun to be a little bit tricky. Like I said before, I'm not going to go over all the settings and knobs and dials that are on this paint gun. But I will tell you that things like the pressure coming into the gun and the pattern of the gun are things you really need to pay attention to. And what I did was I actually took the box, or I took a piece of cardboard. In this case, you can see it right here on the side of the box that the paint came in. I did some test sprays to try to get, see this one ran? You can see this one's got like a nice little oval shape to it. This one here I think was the spray pattern that I ended up with. You can see that adjusting the gun changes how all this looks, how it lays, how it sprays, things like that. One thing I ran into, if you look on the fine print on the can, okay, they're going to tell you what pressure to spray at. Now, on this one, it told me to spray it at something like 40 psi, and was it 40/20, something like that. And when I talked to my friend David, he used a similar number. So I assumed, all right, that's what I should spray at. The first coat that I put down on the body of the Jeep, which is the first thing that I sprayed, my God, it almost looked hairy. It was weird. It laid odd. I ended up with like these particulates in the air that were coming from the paint. And it turned out that the reason it did that was because I had the pressure too high. There was some fine print on that label that said if I have an HVLP gun, which is high velocity, low pressure, the gun should be at like 12 psi. So I lowered it to 12 and it laid beautiful. So pay attention to what's on the can. Pay attention to the mixture. Pay attention to what kind of gun you have. So you're going to have to do a little bit of research on all of those things before you load anything into this gun and start spraying. So just keep that in mind. Pay attention to those things. And that's going to change between the paint, the primer, and the clear coat. All those are going to have their own settings. So you're going to have to check those out on the containers. So pay attention to that before you spray anything. And like I said, test on some cardboard. Make sure that it looks like it's laying properly before you go ahead and spray it onto your vehicle. Now this might be the most important question of all. Should you paint your rig at home? Should you paint your project car at home? If you'd have asked me this the day after I finished the job, I'd have told you, hell effing no, it ain't worth it. There is so much work involved in getting this thing done. There was so much prep, so much cleanup, so much disassembly and reassembly, so much thought, so much, for me, anxiety. There was just kind of anxiety that went into making sure that I did it right, which, by the way, I mentioned earlier in the video, I had someone that I was asking questions to, so I want to thank David. Man, you are a saint. All the questions I asked you, all the time we spent chatting on the phone about like, what the hell should I do next? Oh my God, the paint didn't lay right. How do I fix it? He probably never wants to talk to me again. But David used to run an auto body shop years ago, but he doesn't live nearby, so he couldn't like come here and help me with it. Although I was tempted to pay for him to come out to Pennsylvania here to help me directly. He was a saint, right? He just, he helped me out. He answered all my questions. And without him, I don't know if it would have come out as well as it did. But I digress. Should you do this at home? It was a fun project. It was aggravating at times. It was a lot of work. It took me months. All that I just described, all the work for prep and disassembly and of course, the LJ Grille wasn't really part of the paint job, but it was a big job to get that done. All the work I had to do to prep it and all the work I had to do to get the paint down, and it was a lot, right? It was a lot. and I wanted it to look nice at the other end. So I was really stressing out about things, and there was a lot of times where I was about ready to do the next thing, but man, I just wasn't certain I was ready to do it yet, and I would just put down my tools and I would wait till the next day until I'd thought over whatever was right in front of me. And sometimes I changed my mind and did things differently, and I don't regret that, right? So, should you do it at home? I don't know. It's really hard for me to answer. Would I do this again? Maybe. I wouldn't do it tomorrow, that's for dang sure. But if in 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years this paint job is looking shabby and I really want to replace the paint job and I don't want to replace the Jeep, I might paint it again. I learned a ton on this project, and I really feel like I understand auto body better than I did before I started. So now I'm a little less afraid about, you know, rubbing up against a tree on the trail or something like that, because I feel better about being able to fix that if I really needed to. Now, would I fix it? Again, it's a trail Jeep. I might just leave it. But yeah, I also think that if you have a car hobby, being able to paint is just a good skill to have. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be painting the hardtop on my dad's TJ. He had to replace his hardtop because of a tree fell on his Jeep. And the used hardtop he got is just, the finish is terrible. So he bought paint, and he's going to have me paint it for him while he's recovering from a knee surgery. So if it weren't for that, if it weren't for me doing this job, I wouldn't be able to do that job. And he'd have to go pay someone to paint his hardtop. So, you know, it's a good skill to have. I'm not going to be opening up a body shop anytime soon, but I think it's good, especially if you're in a hobby like off-roading, where you're going to scratch your paint. You're going to rub up against trees. You're going to nick things. And if you want your rig to look nice, you don't want it to have that patinaed look over the years, being able to fix the paint is just a good skill to have. So would I do it again? Absolutely. Should you do it? That's entirely up to you. If you feel like you have a little bit of skill in painting in general, then sure, I'd say go ahead and try it. If you've never picked up even a rattle can in your life, I think you'll regret it. You'll end up with a paint job that doesn't quite meet your own standards. I mean, this paint job doesn't quite meet my standards, and I did it. Maybe I'm just picky. So at the end of the day, I'm pretty happy with the finish. There is some orange peel. If you look close enough, there's a lot of places where I could have done a better job. There's a run or two in the paint. There's spots where I've already nicked, scratched, and chipped the paint because it's already been on the trail a couple of times. So it's already got some miles on it. But I tell you, everyone who's seen it, even people who know paint, have told me that I did a pretty good job. And I'm happy with that, right? And like I said, it's good enough for a trail Jeep. It's shiny where it needs to be shiny. It looks nice. It catches the eye. The LJ Grille, I mean, people have walked up to this thing and they're like, how'd you get a YJ so long? They don't even realize that it's just a TJ with a YJ grill. Other people don't even notice that I've done the grill, right? Because, and in my opinion, that means I did a good enough job making it look stock that they don't even realize it's changed until they look closer. So I think it's pretty cool. There were a handful of people at Bantam that noticed. Most people just walked right on by. They thought it was just another TJ. So, I hope you found this informative, folks. It was a heck of a job. I hope that my blood, sweat, and tears can help you decide, or even help you along in your own project. I'm not a pro. Like I said earlier, I had a lot of help from my buddy David, and I really appreciate all the advice that he gave me, even if it was from several hundred miles away. Without him, I don't think I could have finished this project, at least not to the quality that I got here. Yeah. Folks, if you want to try a project like this, try a project like this. Just do yourself a favor and don't try it on a $90,000 show car on the first time you're going to do it. Remember, folks, get out there and wheel. I'll catch you in the next one.